Good afternoon. Let's see here, make sure that we've got good. Okay, we are live. Welcome all to the last in our coronavirus initiative series. Before we get started, I'm broadcasting here from Tampa, Florida, where we're having one of our early summer thunderstorms. So I am knocking wood that the power doesn't go out. If it does, I will do my best to get back online quickly. But thank you all for attending. This is the final in our series of webinars, this series of webinars, not a final webinar by any stretch. We will, I've already announced this, I know, in some of the newsletters that have gone out, but we are going to be holding various webinars through June. We've got one on what has changed in college admissions, kind of broadly, and then we'll also be holding a webinar on the college essay, how to write your personal statement. So that one's actually a tutorial. So check your email tomorrow if you do not have links to those already. But I mentioned how to write your college essay. Guess what? It's not just your college essay. That's what I'm going to be talking about. Everybody sort of knows about the one essay, but there's a crucial essay that people have to write. We call it the why essay. And especially for those of you who are rising 12th graders. Congratulations on finishing the school year, but I do want to sort of talk through one of the biggest traps you will run into in the fall when you are working on your applications. All right, so that's me. I'm Bill, William, what have you. You've probably seen me on a few of these webinars before, but a few of my qualifications there. But let's go ahead and talk about the college essay. As I mentioned, we're holding a webinar on it in a few weeks. It's the thing you've been hearing about for years. When you're in 7th grade, you first hear about the college essay and wonder what it means. And what most people mean by it is the 650-word max essay that you write as part of the common application. And that's an important essay, and it's one that people rightly pay a lot of attention to. But guess what? It's not the end of the story. It's really essays you have to write. Because what happens when you start choosing specific schools to apply to is that a lot of those specific schools have specific essay questions. A lot of them will ask about an activity, an extracurricular that's meaningful to you. Johns Hopkins asks you to talk about somebody who influenced your life. There's this really nasty one from Princeton where you have to write about a cultural value and how you defined it. Brown has 4 different essay topics that you have to write on, but that's nothing because if you apply to Stanford, you got to write 11 essays. Now, the question that always comes up inevitably is, do I get to reuse essays? And the answer is sort of. If you write about a favorite activity for Brown, it's probably the same favorite activity you have for Northwestern as you have for Vanderbilt, as you have for any number of schools that aren't maybe quite that prominent. Very rare that your favorite activity is going to change. You might have to tweak word count a little. There's what we call a context essay. There are a lot of varieties of that. Basically, the idea is tell us about something, somebody who influenced you. You may find yourself getting to reuse stuff there. There's what I call the wildcard essay. I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now. Just go ahead and Google University of Chicago essay prompts if you want to see what that's about. But the biggest type of essay to worry about, and the one that you really can't, unfortunately, reuse, is what we call the why essay. Or its near cousin, the why curricular essay. And these are the most difficult essays to write. You will see them all over the place. Tufts asks you what aspect of the Tufts undergraduate experience prompted you to apply, in other words, why Tufts? And you only get 100 to 150 words to say something, and you better say something interesting and important. At Duke, you have to explain why you want to study engineering at Duke. That's what we think of as a why curricular. If you're applying to the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke, you're not going to spend a lot of time talking about how you want to go to Cahill and watch the basketball team. You're pretty much talking about the academics, whereas the Tufts prompt I've got up there, you are more than welcome to talk about non-curricular aspects. Northwestern gives you 300 words. That one's kind of generous. We see them up to about 650, 800 words. Why NYU, 400 words. Yeah, it's all over the place. Even sometimes you'll get sort of a long, prompt, and at the end you sort of see what aspects of the college's program attract your interest. So you can actually kind of disregard all the in that case up there on the screen, not sure how well it's showing, but Dartmouth always likes to lead off with a quote from Daniel Webster, who's an alum more than 200 years ago. But let's talk about what a why essay is really asking. It's kind of two big parts. Who are you? Where are you headed? And why us? Now, the who are you part, you're probably going to repeat to some extent. You are not probably thinking about studying Russian literature at Northwestern and pre-medical science at Tulane and business at Georgia Tech. You probably have some general sense. But obviously that second part, you are not going to have the same reasons for applying to a Northwestern as a Columbia as a Michigan. Northwestern is in the suburbs of Chicago, Columbia is in New York City, and the University of Michigan is a huge school in sort of a college town, an hour or more outside of Detroit. These are very, very different environments, if nothing else, and they teach differently, and you are going to have to do the work. Well, let's talk a little bit about the first part, though, since you will get to reuse that to some extent. I talked a couple of weeks ago about how the personal statement is asking who are you, which it is. The why essay is asking a variation on that. It's really asking what's your path. What is it that you are planning to do? Now, you're going to need to talk about some of the things you've done that have led you to believe it's the right path for you. Very few people decide that they want a life in the theater, have never seen a play before in their lives. So you probably had some experiences that led you to believe that you might want to study. Really, I would put it another way, what is your reason for going to college? And yeah, I know your reason for going to college on some levels because mom and dad kind of expect it. But the fact is, it is still voluntary. No state government is going to show up with a truancy officer if you don't go. You should have some sort of articulated reason. Now, the big point I want to make here, though, is that you do not have to know everything about your life. People get kind of panic about this, and I understand. But none of these colleges expect you to have your entire life figured out at 17 or 18 years old. It would be kind of weird if you did, and kind of isn't even really setting you up for the life that you will likely have. Sort of a cliche these days about most adults have 3, 4, 5 careers over the course of our working lives. I'm on my third. So you don't have to have your whole life figured out. You don't have to know what you're going to major in necessarily. In fact, again, most schools are going to give you at least 1 and usually 2 years to figure out what it is you want to major in. Because you don't know. In high school, you have a limited breadth of exposure to different things. Maybe you got to take 1 economics class, but that hasn't told you whether or not you necessarily want to major in economics. And there are plenty of subjects that are taught in colleges that really have no parallel in a high school curriculum. That said, again, I've never met anybody who's deciding maybe they were going to study Russian literature, maybe pre-medical stuff, maybe they were going to study government, or maybe it was going to be astrophysics or something. You have some idea, right? You know, broadly speaking, if you're somebody's tending towards the humanities or somebody who's tending towards kind of business-oriented fields or what have you. So the fact that you haven't totally decided whether it's going to be molecular biology or maybe chemistry is fine. But in that case, it's some sort of science thing and there's something that's convinced you that that's your path. All right, but the second part, the stuff that you actually have to do fresh. How do you figure out why us? The why us part of the question. Why Northwestern, why Michigan, why Tulane, why NYU, why any of the schools that ask it? What are some things that you should be looking at to answer that question a little more eloquently than the other students who are going to phone it in and write bad why essays? And trust me, we see a lot of bad why essays. First thing I would encourage you to do is try and understand the philosophy of the school. Each of these schools has a different way that they view their teaching mission. What is it that they require? In most schools, there's something called a general education curriculum. You are going to be expected to take maybe a couple of years of a foreign language, You should get, a couple of courses in the social sciences, a couple in the hard sciences, a couple in humanities, but it's kind of up to you whether you want to take an economics course and a Russian politics course to fulfill that social sciences thing, or if you're going to mix in, another topic. So that's a sort of general ed. We want to make sure that you're broadly educated, kind of up to you to figure out how to fill that out. But there are schools that use what we call a core curriculum. University of Chicago, Columbia University. The core curriculum holds, or the philosophy behind it, in fact, is that at the age of 18, the average college freshman, you don't really know that much about the world yet, sorry. And it is their job to make sure you have a certain core set of knowledge. So everybody at Columbia University is going to take the same great books class. Everybody's going to take, it creates sort of a bonding experience among the class. And trust me, both of those schools want to know what you think about the core, why that resonates with you. Now, at the opposite end of the spectrum is Brown University. Also, there's a place called Grinnell College that has this. Amherst up in Massachusetts, a few women's schools do it, have what's called the open curriculum. If you go to Brown University, you're going to be required to take one class, which is a writing class, and that's it. If you never want to see a math class again in your life, you don't have to. If you never want to take a foreign language, you don't have to. Brown's philosophy is you are 18. That is legally an adult. Be an adult. Figure out what it is you want to do. And trust me, Brown wants to know how you're planning on using the open curriculum. They want to make sure that you understand what it is they're doing and that you have some reason why that resonates with you. Now, it is entirely possible that both the open curriculum and the core curriculum resonate with you in different ways. Otherwise, nobody would ever apply to both Columbia and Brown, for example. But you should think about how that fits your own academic direction, academic philosophy. What about the structure of the school as you're trying to understand how the school thinks about teaching mission? Now, what does the calendar look like on a sort of basic level? Most schools have kind of things are a little thrown off these days, although it does look like some schools are adjusting calendars. But I'm assuming by the fall of 2021, the things are a little bit more normal or adjusted, and we'll see something more familiar with the fall semester, spring semester, 4 courses a semester over 4 years. But there are schools that tweak the calendar. There are schools that do what's called an interterm, sometimes it's a January term, where you might go to school for 4 months in the fall, call it September, October, November, December. You're gonna go to class for 4 months in the spring, February to late May. But then in January, you've got an independent study. Maybe you're going really deeply into one subject. So how does that work? Then there are schools that use a quarter system. You might go in the fall, winter, spring. Usually if you're in a quarter system school, you have the summer off. That's the quarter you don't go to campus. But at Dartmouth, they have a quarter system and actually require you to be on, you kind of, there's some restrictions around this your first and last year, but you are sophomore and junior year, you choose which 3 of the 4 quarters you want to be on campus. Sophomore summer, you have to be on campus. But you can sort of decide, okay, winter of my junior year, I won't be on campus then. That's when I'll be pursuing internships. Guess what? You got the internships open to you at that point. You're not competing with everybody else like you would be over the summer. So that's a different way of thinking about the calendar. Let's see. And there's your more traditional, I should have said, fall on the spring semester, which I led with. But also how many classes you take is part of the philosophy. So a semester school, as I said, 4 courses in the fall, 4 in the spring, 8 courses a year. Oftentimes with a quarter system where you go 3 out of 4 quarters a year, you take 3 courses a quarter, so 3 courses 3 times a year, 9 courses a year, similar to 8. Oh, but at Northwestern, it's a quarter system. You take 4 courses a quarter. So you're taking 12 courses a year, 48 courses to graduate. It's a lot more courses than you get somewhere else. Part of their philosophy. What are the values of the school? What do I mean by values? What are some of the ways that they think about teaching you outside the classroom. It's you're only in class, honestly, about 12 to 15 hours a week for the most part, but there are resources available to you as well, and there are things that the school emphasizes. Do you have access to a consortium? Boston would be the most famous of these. If you go to school in Boston, you have access to a consortium school in Boston. You have access to taking classes at other schools in that consortium. So you might be at Boston College, but you can take courses at BU, at Brandeis, at a little school called Harvard. Not necessarily all your courses, but you have access to that kind of stuff. And it's not just Boston that has that. A whole bunch of regions. Philadelphia has one, for example. How does the school value research? In my alma mater, Princeton, every student was required to do a thesis. Now, in many schools, you are given the option to do a thesis, independent research. Maybe you have to be in an honors program to do it. But the way that Princeton emphasizes research for undergraduates is actually requiring you to do independent research as a junior and senior. You can't graduate without it. Or cooperative learning, co-ops, experiential stuff. Northeastern is the most famous of these. If you look up Northeastern University, if they do it the best. At any school, you might pursue internships, of course. Everybody will. But at Northeastern, you're actually going to have that as one of your semesters. It's actually a requirement, and you're going to get course credit for your internship. So it's a level beyond just sort of grabbing a summer internship somewhere. The environment of the campus makes a difference. That right there is on the left, a very pretty day, but it's the same campus, actually. That's Stanford University. It sprawls on forever. It's a huge campus. You kind of need a bike to get across it, or a shuttle of some sort. Now, on the other hand, there are very, very small campuses. That's about the extent of, I think it's Pomona. It's actually been a while since I checked that one. But it's a small liberal arts school. You might be able to walk across in a matter of 6 or 7 minutes. Still bigger than your high school, probably, but which type of campus resonates with you? If it's in a city, is it folded right into the city like an NYU, or I think that's Boston University there on the bottom of the screen? Or is it what we think of as more of an oasis campus? I think that's USC in Los Angeles. It's right in the city, but the campus itself is sort of sealed off from the larger city. So how it integrates into the city. The environment of the school, what it emphasizes, Greek stuff, fraternities, sororities, are they the center of social life? That might affect how you think about a school. It breaks my heart. I didn't get to put up a March Madness bracket for 2020. Hardly way down in the list of losses, of course, but in any event, assuming it comes back next year, there are schools that emphasize athletics quite a bit, and that may or may not work for you. I often say, if you're going to Duke, you better like basketball, because if you don't, you're going to be lonely a lot of January and February. What are the traditions that the school has? I'm not going to explain that one. Just Google Emory and the skeleton guy and you'll figure it out. But what are the sort of, every school has them, sort of kooky things that they do, that the students do to blow off steam. How does that, what are the traditions that resonate with you? And the last thing to think about is how you are learning about the school. Now, up until a few months ago, one of the most common ways, of course, was to visit campus, and we can't do that right now. But virtual tours have actually been around for a while, and there are formal ones and informal ones as well. Students oftentimes put up tours. Good way. It's always been a good way to learn about schools. In fact, I sometimes thought the in-person visits were a little overrated. But what do you learn as you're doing research online? Because thank God you've got access to the internet to do that kind of research. Or you can also get the school newspaper or school materials online, Facebook groups, whatever it is. The reason this is important is, well, number one, it's giving you a more robust vision of the campus that you might be attending. But number two, talking about how you learned about the campus, showing some of the depth of your own research, is one of the ways that you can convince the school that you're interested in them. Because the reason they're really asking you that why essay, why do you want to go here, is because they are trying to figure out, if they offer you admission, will you actually show up? It's sort of the secret agenda. are you a good match for us? And yes, of course, they're trying to figure out if you're a good match. But generally, you know, Harvard, Princeton, MIT, these schools don't need to ask why, because they kind of know if they offer you admission, you'll show up. It's the schools kind of below that tier, at least in terms of their yield rates, meaning how many students accept offers, that are really trying to figure out, okay, if we give you an offer of admission to Northwestern, are you somebody who really loves and gets Northwestern? Or are we sort of like your fifth choice because you've been, you know, all wide-eyed by the Ivies? So talking about how you've researched can actually show the work you've done. Now let me talk about what not to do. Because here's the deal. Every fall, and you can't really start these essays before kind of mid-August, or Labor Day is really the best time. We reject probably about 75 to 80% of the first attempts at a Y essay that our students do. And we try various things, like say this webinar, to avoid that. But there are a lot of traps that students fall into, because these are critical essays, and you cannot phone them in. So let me just talk you through some of the traps in the hopes that you can at least dodge a few of them. Talking about rankings and reputation. Okay, I'm a realist. I know that you pull up US News or QS or Niche or whatever, and you look at the rankings. They're kind of gamed. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look up what Northeastern has done to game the rankings over the years. So schools, they're just an algorithm the schools are playing with. But beyond that, spending a lot of time talking about, how prestigious and world class the school is, doesn't really do anything to explain to the school what you're going to add to the campus. University of Pennsylvania already knows it's got a world class business school in Wharton, so they don't need you to tell them they do. What they are hoping is that the people that they admit to their class will help to maintain or increase the prestige by making contributions to the school, not just monetary, although that's nice, but making contributions to the culture of the school, and being an excellent ambassador for the school in later life. So they're not interested in passing their glory on to you. They want to know what you're going to add. Telling them it's your dream school, that's nice. Who else is the dream school for? Like everybody. The schools get 30,000 applications a year, and they're only admitting a couple thousand students. Beautiful campus, sort of vague stuff. Open-minded students. I've never read an essay where somebody was complimenting the closed-minded students on campus. When we see language like this, we think of it as beauty pageant language, the really kind of vague stuff where people talk about world peace, and world peace is a laudable goal and all that, but it's really general and really vague and doesn't add anything to your essay. Next one, relying too much on superlatives or doing really shallow research. Remember, I said you want to show your research to some extent. Nothing is perfect. I love my alma mater. It was not a perfect place where every day was sunshine and rainbows. Unique opportunity. There are very few unique opportunities, and you are not going to have a unique opportunity to study at Emory if a couple thousand other people are also doing it. Nothing unique about that. Just pulling up the motto or mission statement of a school as being representative of anything other than the marketing bit it is. I put one up. I don't know how big people's screens are. University of Michigan, is developing leaders and citizens who will challenge the present and enrich the future. Every school says something like that. It's not really telling you that much, kind of specific. Now, there are things that make Michigan different from a Northwestern or Ohio State or wherever else, but you need to go deeper to figure out what that is. And please, not mascots. I've always dreamed of being a Blue Devil. Really? The worst of these I had was one year when somebody wrote about how they wanted to go to Columbia University because their favorite color was blue. Trust me, Columbia University is not starved for students who like the color blue. Course catalogs of faculty, this is a tricky one, but here's what a lot of you do. I can't wait to get to school and take CIS 537 biomedical image analysis. All right, what that tells me is you spent 2 minutes, you open up a course catalog, and you scrolled through it really quickly in some departments, and you found the name of the course that sounded different. But here's the deal, you don't know anything about that. First of all, 537 usually means graduate level course and you couldn't take it anyway. But let's leave that aside. Course offerings change all the time. The offerings from the fall of 2019 are not going to be the same as the offerings in fall of 2020, even without the disruption to campuses, or the fall of 2021. Offerings come and go. So yes, an introduction to macroeconomics will probably always be on the curriculum. But the cooler sounding stuff, sometimes that's just one-off stuff. My advisor in college used to do pretty much every semester. He just had an open spot. He'd try and figure out something cool to teach he'd never taught before. He wasn't planning on building it into a long-term thing. And faculty, this is the other one. If you have actually had some sort of relationship with a faculty member, you've been following that faculty member's work for years, you might have corresponded with, okay. But pulling the name of a faculty member out of a course catalog, I can't wait to study with Professor Jenkins, when you know nothing about Professor Jenkins. Bad move. It sounds really shallow. It really does. And, you know, faculty move around all over the place. You're probably not, as an undergraduate, going to school to study with a specific faculty member. Talking about TV shows and famous alumni. A few years ago, this used to be really bad with the Big Bang Theory in Caltech. You know, everybody writes the same thing. Writing about famous alumni as if you're going to sort of, you know, bask in the glory of where some TV star went. No, you're looking to make your own contribution. Don't try and hit your start as somebody else. Generic stuff. Love these. At this school, I can take elective classes outside of my major. I can use the career services office to go find internships and even job opportunities. The school has a low student to faculty ratio. Oh, and there are research opportunities at the school. Yeah. And hands-on learning, I should have added. In the laboratories, you get to actually do stuff with your hands. You might as well at that point, excuse my dogs, you can tell them nothing in our office. At that point, you might as well be saying, I want to go to college, because all colleges have those kinds of things. See if I can get this dog silenced. All right. Low student to faculty ratio is one that trips people up sometimes, because schools game that number kind of. They just do. They all come in between 6 and 7. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have small classes. It's also kind of irrelevant if you have a bunch of lectures. I took lectures where there were 30 students in the class and lectures where there were 300 students in the class. And it's the same experience that the professor's talking. It doesn't matter how many people are around you. All right. And for God's sake, don't do form letters. I mean it. You've got to write these fresh each time. If you do what one of our students tried to do a couple of years ago, which was come up with a template where you could insert the name of a tradition and the name of a campus landmark and close by mentioning the mascot, it is going to read like a form letter. You are considering spending 4 years of your life and quite a bit of money, even with financial aid, to attend one of these schools. They have a right to know whether or not you've taken that investment of time, energy seriously. This is not something you just sort of whip off in 20 or 30 minutes. And look, this is going to be true as well when you get out on the job market, you go sort of graduate school and job market stuff. You are not going to go for an interview at a company in 10 years' time and sit down with no idea what the company does. No, you're going to do some research ahead of time, try and figure out their mission. Yeah, so it's good training to understand that I'm sorry, but you do have to do this stuff fresh. Because what we want you to do is avoid something like the one on the left. It's my dream to attend a world-class school like Columbia. I would be honored to surround myself with similarly ambitious students striving to change the world, and in recognition of all the hard work I did in high school and plan to continue to do in college. I cannot wait, it goes on like that. This isn't literally an essay we've seen, except it is. I see this all the time. It tells me nothing about the student. They're just sort of showering on the superlatives, and it doesn't do anything because it doesn't tell me anything specific. doesn't help me picture who that student might be on campus or how that student might have thought about Columbia in this case. But something like this one, my long-term ambition is to be a writer, perhaps a journalist or perhaps in fiction, but that is not the reason I've chosen Columbia. I need a broad background to write with authority, and the core curriculum is a necessary step towards that breadth. In truth, when I first reviewed the core, I saw 2 subjects that I did not like. Now I'm curious. I want to know what subjects he didn't like and how he's thinking about the core curriculum, and I'm learning something about that student who does not have the same exact reasons for attending Columbia in this case as 3,000 other essays I've read. That's what I want you to be. I want you to be something specific. Because if you can knock that Y essay out of the park, you're going to increase your chances of being accepted. You are, at many schools, going to increase your chances of getting merit-based aid, and not necessarily the Ivies, but at schools like Tulane or wherever else we routinely see awards of in the high 5 figures, low 6 figures over the course of 4 years, based on the fact that this school kind of likes the student, wants to try and convince the student to come. And a big part of that is, in fact, the Y essay. And I've been throwing out, some of the Ivies here and stuff, but I mentioned Tulane. Sometimes when I do this, I actually hold up 2 different essays for Tulane. One that's very generic and one that's very specific, based on some real students a couple of years ago. And the student who wrote the generic essay had a test score about 250 points higher than the student who wrote the specific essay. And the student with a lower test score, much lower test score, got in, and the student with the higher score was rejected outright. Schools really do care about whether you get them. They really do care about these Y essays. So I'm not saying you should phone in any part of your application, really, and I'm not saying that your main personal statement essay that we encourage our rising seniors to write over the summer ahead is not a key part. But take those Y essays seriously. Do not wait till the last minute. Do the work. It makes a difference. Thank you all for attending this series. As I mentioned earlier, while this is the end of this series of webinars, it's not the end of our webinars. We are continuing to offer stuff. We've got one coming up on more broadly speaking what's changed and what we're seeing. Obviously, this is a constantly moving target. Joked for a while that every time I logged on, 3 new schools went test optional. Now we're also starting to hear how calendars might be different and what have you. So we're doing a webinar on how college admissions are changing in the wake of this crisis. And then we are also offering a tutorial. This is a little bit of an advantage here. We've historically offered the tutorial to students in the Tampa Bay area where we're located. And we'd all sort of show up at a big hotel room, essentially a ballroom for a day and work through some essay stuff. And circumstances being what they are, we can't exactly be putting 50 to 100 of you in a ballroom together to work on some essays. So we're offering it online this year, and that means you don't just have to live within driving distance of us. So encourage everybody to attend that. If you are a student with UCA, thank you so much. And it's free to you. If you are not a student with UCA, there is a kind of nominal charge for the tutorial, which can be applied to a program down the road if you decide to enroll. But otherwise, thank you so much. Looks like the rain let up, which meant that the power did not go out, instead of knocking wood. But it looks like we made it through this webinar unscathed. And thank you so much. And wish you all continued good health. And for those of you who are headed into your senior year, good luck on your applications. I encourage you to get to work on some of those essays now that the school year has wound down. Thank you all so much.